I am thrilled to be with Deb Grant today. She has had an incredible career. She's currently an independent director and also a leadership development, diversity, and inclusion expert. Her career has had so many highlights. One of the highlights was being appointed by the board of directors as GE's first Black female corporate officer. For GE, she has been the president of the GE Foundation while being the global diversity officer. Some describe Deb as a unicorn, and she uses her horn to shatter glass ceilings while bringing scores of others along, many into the C-suite. Her second chapter began in 2017 when she established Corporate Playbook, a business consulting firm that specializes in executive coaching and strategic solutions. She's also launched Dining with Deb, which brings community professional women together to cross racial, religious, political barriers and drive meaningful conversation. Deb, our unicorn, I'm so thrilled for you to be here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with you.
Deb, let's talk about identity. And I'm curious, how do you identify and how has that shaped your career?
Well, I identify as a Black woman. My life is very defined by that. I grew up in a mostly segregated middle class neighborhood in New Orleans, Louisiana, which is where I am now. I've kind of come back full circle, not in the same neighborhood, but back to the same city. But I grew up in a middle class neighborhood with a family with strong middle class values around hard work, educational achievement, preparedness. Um, and I would say, even though my life, my school, my church was largely segregated, my parents really felt that race was not and never should be a limiting factor for achievement. I started school in a very small private pre-kindergarten and kindergarten for Black students. The school, as a digression, at the time it started in the 30s, which I was not that old, but in the 30s, was started because the public schools in New Orleans would only enroll Black students in first through fifth grade. That was it. That was all that was permissible by law. So there was a Black female educator who just believed in students, who started a private, nursery pre-KK, which was very rigorous. We were expected to be reading in kindergarten, and counting, and we learned languages beyond English. So I grew up in a situation that was very, very rigorous, and really, really expected us to learn and to perform and to excel. And to continue with my story, I then attended a pragmatically segregated, and I say that because segregation was illegal, but it was still pragmatically segregated public school across the street from my house through sixth grade. We had reverse integration, I will call it. So in my school, which was an all-Black school, the white teachers came to our school versus us being bused somewhere else. I was able to excel academically. I was involved in Girl Scouts and stuff like that. And that is very germane to my story, because when I started junior high, I went to Ursuline Academy. Ursuline Academy, this is now seventh grade, seventh through 12th grade. Ursuline Academy is the oldest Catholic girls' school in the country. It was founded in 1727. It was overwhelmingly a white school with very few other minorities at the time, if you were, a handful of African Americans and just one or two of anything else. Because I was very academically prepared, my mom was a school teacher, so she did a lot of work with me outside of the school curriculum, but just to be sure, I did extra stuff all throughout my life. But I was able to really excel. I was in the Honor Society. I was in theater. I was elected president of my class, both freshman year and junior year. So that solidified, I'm coming back to your original kind of point, that solidified for me that my value, my worth, my ability to achieve would never be limited by race or gender, because I was able to excel in an environment where people really did not look like me or have the same kind of background as me, as all other than all being girls.
Deb, you culminated in this incredible dual role Chief Diversity, Global Diversity Head, and President of the GE Foundation. What would you say, looking back at your career moments? Was there one that you thought, wow, that advice or this moment or this learning really helped accelerate you to such top roles?
Well, I think just my mother always said to me, if you don't know something, don't pretend, ask. And so I was never afraid to ask if I was always intellectually curious. And I think that's one thing that always helped me because even in business, even if you're working on a project, being intellectually curious, can help you take the project you're working on to new heights. You don't just satisfy, you're not just satisfied with, hey, we said we wanted to accomplish A, B, and C. If you're intellectually curious, you're now thinking about, well, what could D, E, and F look like? And those are the things that I think distinguished me sometimes maybe from others who were similarly situated. And I was willing to push the envelope to say, well, what else can we do? What else is possible? What else can we dream?
That is a special characteristic, Deb, because sometimes when I work with clients, I'm not sure about what your clients share with you, but mine say, well, if I share that I don't know, I could appear as if I lack knowledge or that I shouldn't be in the room. And so, can you share from your perspective? Because it's an interesting piece. I will ask the question because not because I don't know, but actually because I'm curious. And so, can you share that mindset of not knowing doesn't mean anything, it just means I'm curious. Could you say more about that?
Sure, and it's a great question because I think it's multi-layered. So part of it is you can't show up and ask all the questions, right? I mean, you can't
Mhm.
say, I don't know anything. I need to ask everything. So I think you have to come in and establish a level of credibility around preparedness and knowledge. So you
Hmm.
have to come in. I talked about that A, B, and C, right? Before
Mhm.
we get to what could D, E, and F look like. So with that A, B, and C, I am demonstrating a level of mastery or knowledge on whatever the project or the skill or the activity or the initiative we're trying to do. But then as I push the envelope, I'm like, hey, I'm just curious about this. Or, I thought about this, and this, but I'm not sure how this would work. What do you think? So you're coming with something, you're coming almost with a theory of the case, a hypothesis, and
Mhm.
then you expand the question. So you're not just coming with a blank sheet of paper, you're coming with something, and then you're asking to expand. Or I'm not sure about this. What do you think about it? Or, that's sort of a way I think to sort of frame that so it doesn't appear that, wow, I don't know anything. And I think you've got to have the confidence, I'll share this as well, to say when you don't know.
Mhm.
That's another
Mhm.
thing I think and I think that's helped me from my career standpoint is to have the courage to say, you know what, that's a great question. Let me get back to you. Because
Mhm.
people who will pretend or fake an answer are always going to be found out. They will always be found out and they will be embarrassed. And so it's great to just say, that's a great question. I will come back to you and then make a point of coming back to that person. And then you build credibility in an organization that way.
It's gorgeous. Let me just stamp these because it's so powerful. One is don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. If you don't know, you'll be found out. Don't be afraid to ask. At the same time, come prepare yourself. Have some knowledge. Know your ABCs. So prepare yourself. Third is asking questions is a sign of curiosity, which is a leadership strength. And it's an opportunity to get to, as you said, DEF, push the envelope. And it's a way to impress people, right? To say, like, given all that we've discussed and all that I've read, I wonder, and ask that question. And then have the confidence to say, I don't know, and I'll come
Yeah.
back to you. So it's so
Yeah.
beautiful because we don't learn this, right? Often we're like, oh, I don't want to appear not knowledgeable. And yet it's actually a super strength to ask questions and push.
Yes, and I love your way of phrasing it, which was I wonder. That's a typical
Mhm.
thing you can almost keep in your hip pocket as an
Mhm.
easy way to phrase it. Hey, I wonder, and then whatever it is you want to say, have a couple of those that are just ready that you can put out there, so you don't have to feel uncomfortable or fumble, but you've almost practiced saying, well, I wonder, and then you've got your thought.
Beautiful. We've had so many peaks, Deb. I'm curious, was there ever a rock bottom moment or a tough moment or a mistake that really helped shape you?
So, I don't dwell in what I will call mistakes, because I truly believe everything is a learning opportunity, whether it
Mhm.
goes well or not well, it's a learning opportunity. What I would say was tough for me is the time in my life when I was really juggling all the things, as they say, all the things, motherhood, a job where I was traveling a lot, being a spouse, being a family member from the standpoint of my own mother, and other siblings and so forth. All being a community member. I always believe in giving back to one's community. So you're juggling all the things. And again, I had to really go back to what I learned early on, which was, you know what? I don't have to do all of this by myself. I don't have to be all things to all people. I can ask for help, and it's okay. Because one of the things around asking for help, particularly in some of the roles that I mentioned, we have preconceived notions in terms of our value as a woman, as a mother. As a mother, I should just know this. I should just know this because I'm a mother, because I gave birth. Well, who said that? Who said that? Who made that up? Maybe you don't. Maybe you got to look in a book somewhere. Maybe you got to ask somebody. So I think, really getting comfortable when you've got to juggle, to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't know. And then thinking about the things you want to prioritize, because you can't necessarily be all things to all people all the time, all by yourself. So all things to all people all the time, all by yourself. So some things you may say, you know what? I love being very active in my church. I may put the active role on a bit of a back burner for a while, where I'm going to attend, but I'm not going to lead a church committee or anything, because I'm doing these other things. I will come back to this maybe in a different point in life, maybe when I'm not traveling as much, maybe when my kids are a little older. But I think you've got to really think about strategically prioritizing your life over the arc of time versus trying to do everything in one moment and feeling like a failure if you're not doing it all in one moment.
It's so powerful, right? Because there's this myth that we can do all the things, be all the things, be this perfect, quote unquote, perfect woman. And it's a farce. We can, while we can't have it all, we can choose our all. And I talk about this in the book, and I'm sure you have talked about this in your Dining with Deb events. What is our all in this chapter, in this moment? And maybe it means being a lead on this committee for church, or maybe it means attending and allowing other people to lead. So I love how intentional you've been, because you've had such big roles, and also community and family roles. Those are important roles too. It's not like work is be all end all. We need to see our whole self. With that, Deb, I'm curious for you. I mean, honestly, it's incredible what you've accomplished in your career. What do you think made the difference, besides being curious and really, asking for help as a all of these parts of your identities? What else would you say really made a difference to you getting into such a top role, for example, at GE?
Well, I had supporters, I had mentors, and I had sponsors. I mean, I was thinking about, was there ever sort of a pivotal moment, if you will, when something really kind of came to fruition and accelerated my career? And I can speak to one very specific moment. I was probably, I would say, kind of early executive, if you will. And I had two children. My daughters are 2 years apart. So one was under a year old and the other one was just two plus. And there was a leader, a very, very highly regarded leader in the company, who wanted me to come and consider an opportunity working directly for him. And I didn't want to move to where he was located. I'm like, I got a kid under a year old. I'm barely, juggling all the things. I really don't want to. And this was a highly regarded leader, highly respected, somebody I knew I could learn from. And I just said, I really just don't want to. So I'm thinking about, how can I message no, but also make sure people think I'm still serious about my career, right? Because I never sort of said no before. Every other thing that it kind of come up kind of worked out, like, yeah, this kind of works or whatever. But it's like, no, I don't want to do this, not at this point in time. So I did call him and I said, hey, look, I, really can't do this at this point in time, blah, 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 blah. Here's all the reasons why. But I would love to work directly with you, if this opportunity ever presented itself in the future, because I hear you're great to learn from, blah, blah, blah. So we kind of shake hands on the phone, and part ways. Well, 5 months later, it was a reorg. He got promoted to being my boss's boss. So he moved. I didn't relocate. He relocated. And so now he's my boss's boss. And so within about 3 weeks of him taking the role, he reached out and said, "Hey, I want to set up a meeting with you. I kind of like to pick up where we left off." So we talked. He created a role for me to work directly for him on a project that was very important to him, that allowed me to work with him directly so he could see me and get to know me. And then it allowed me to work with members of his team. So why was all of that important? It was important because he ended up becoming one of my biggest sponsors, because he had heard about me when he wanted me to work for him 5 months prior, but he didn't really know me. He got a chance to see me directly. So I'm working directly with him. He got a chance to coach me to ensure I was going to be success. So he didn't just throw me in to say, "Well, here's the project, good luck, fill me in about 3 weeks." He said, "No, let's meet weekly because I want to ensure that this goes well." He was investing in me to ensure that this went well. And then he had me present out to his staff. So this is now my boss who's on his staff and others. So they had a chance to see me. They had a chance to see that he was championing me, that I was important to him. And it ended up making the difference in me getting my next big promotion, which was a big promotion. He was very much responsible for that. And I always saw that as, wow, as I dissected it, years later, this is how this kind of worked. And how can I role model this? So I tried to
Mhm.
do this for other people as well. I tried to leverage my power, my strength, my ability, wherever I was in an organization, to do exactly the same thing.
It's a beautiful story. And if you wouldn't mind, Deb, what was his race? What is his identity, his background?
White male.
Yeah. It's I love that we have these stories because I also have white males who have power, who shared and invested in me. And looking back, I don't think I knew how pivotal the sponsors were in my career. So I'm so grateful we're lifting them up. Deb, can you talk more about the relationship? Did you say this is I want this person to be my sponsor? Did he tap you because you were just shining brightly? That initial kickoff. Can you share more about how that relationship got developed?
Sure. And there's another interesting nuance to it as well. So it got developed because, quite frankly, someone went to him 5 months prior and said, "Hey, you don't have any African American women on your team.
Mm,
And you should do something about that given your role and who you say you are."
mm,
So he made a call around the company and said, "Who are up and coming African American women with this kind of skill set background?" My name ended up on the list. So that's the call we had where I said, "No, I cannot relocate at this time." Fast forward 5 months. So he already knows about me. He's heard about me. And
mhm.
given how he sort of operated, I'm sure he made a bunch of phone calls to kind of check me out and heard a positive report. Another interesting thing that was very nuanced, and I say this even more so for the white men who may watch this podcast, and that is, so he was sponsoring me, so he was championing me, all of this. Now, when it came time for the promotion, in the conversations, and I learned all this well after the fact, in the conversations, he was, "Deb is great, but I think maybe she needs this, this, and this, or maybe one other thing, or da da da." It was just one additional, even though he had worked with me more closely than anyone else in the room. It took an African American man in the room who also knew me, who said, "You are the problem because you want her to jump even higher than you are asking others to jump as you describe in this conversation." And for him, to his credit, it was beyond eye-opening. And he said, "You're absolutely right. And we're gonna make some things happen for her."
Wow. And that's the game. I mean, that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
reality is that
yeah.
even when you got the help and there was intention and there was, it's almost like you're set up, right? Set up to
Because
succeed.
we're
And
all
yet there's
human,
one
right?
more, right?
Right,
One,
because we're all human, because we're all human.
yeah.
Because now you've worked with this person, you know her, she's good, yeah, all that was great. But now it's time for you to co-sign.
Yep,
Now you got to co-sign. So when you're
exactly.
co-signing, ooh, boy, that starts to feel a little scary. Like, what if this fails? What if she doesn't do well? Does this now, throw all of the world into chaos? Which I can't imagine I would throw all of the world into chaos. But that's sort of, but then I say that and I share that with men, white men allies who want
Mhm.
to be helpful, to just understand, make sure you're not over indexing and asking that person who you are championing to do more, versus sort of at least being on par with others.
I am appreciative, so appreciative. I'm an ally for you. That's why I really want you to do more. That's why there's just a little bit extra that you got to show me because we have, as women, women of color, it's based on performance, right? Not potential. Deb, I see a lot of potential in you. Let me just give you that role, that salary increase. It's what have you done?
Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when I'm putting my name next to yours, you got to
Yep.
really have done it like really well, really
I mean,
better than
A plus
anybody.
plus plus plus, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So
I
I
remember
just
that.
think that's an interesting nuance that as people listen to this or watch this, I want them to really think about the entire story that I shared, not just I had a great sponsor, but I had a sponsor who also was willing to listen to other input and realize, wow, I'm doing the thing that I really don't want to have happen. Let me get out of the way here. I've done my job. Let me get out of the way and let her fly.
And it takes a family, right? Like imagine what it took for that African American man to say,
Yeah.
nope, you're doing it. You're the problem. I mean, wow. I mean,
Yeah, and I'm not in the room for this, right?
right,
This is
right.
all years ago, and this is all shared with me later, but this is what happens.
So powerful. I mean, it takes a village. This is how we make change. I want to go back to this point you mentioned earlier, which Dining with Deb is a beautiful example. You said for the people who've opened doors for you, for the sponsors who've supported you, you're trying to be that for others. Can you tell me more about what that actually looks like? Because I want to get concrete. Some people are all about allyship. I want to help. I'm also about inclusivity, allowing sharing power. And yet, you see some actions where I wonder if the talk is actually matching the walk. And so can you share with me some specific examples so that we can learn about what it really means to pull others as you rise?
Sure, and we can get to Dining with Deb a bit later because I think there's some other examples here that are more direct to your question. I think it's being very intentional when you are going to mentor or sponsor someone, and how do you behave when you're trying to do that? So, are you actively inquiring how are they doing with them directly and with others? How is Annalisa doing?
Mhm,
What is she doing well? Is there feedback that I could give her that would be helpful? Now, this is not you're asking her, you're asking people working with her, you're
mm,
asking people senior to her, you're asking people who are her peers, because when you are ready to throw her name in the hat for something, you want to know where you're going to have allies support in the room. And
mhm,
if you're not having support or if you're getting some pushback, you want to be sure you can get that person to agreement. You want to be sure it's almost, if you think about that concept of having the meeting before the meeting, if
right,
you will, when you're trying to advance a cause or an initiative, when you're trying to advance a person. It's
right.
the same concept, right? So if she just did this a little bit better, or if she just presented more financials when she presents, she's given us great concepts, great ideas, and there's results. But if she just gave us a little more of the financials, so if she gave you a little more of the financials, I'm the sponsor speaking. If she gave you a little more of the financials, you would see she was really ready to ride. Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of understand that. And now you can go back with feedback, real feedback for the person you're trying to have as your protege or to help. The
Mhm,
problem that happens with proteges or sponsees or whatever you want to call them is they never really hear what they need to do better. Everybody
mhm,
says, "Oh, you're great," but you never really get well, yeah, great, but there's one other thing. What's that other thing? What is it that I need to do, or what, or how I need to show up? It may not even be what I need to do, or who do I get to know? Who do I need to
mhm,
know? Who
mhm,
needs to know me? Who
mhm.
needs to know me? Who needs to feel comfortable and confident that they can say, yeah, Deb or whomever would be great that I haven't spent any time with. there's things like that that I think are part of the game, if you will.
I want to highlight this meeting before the meeting because the meeting, the big meeting we're talking about is a meeting where we're going to put people up for promotions,
Yes,
opportunities,
that's right.
salaries, and it's not a meeting where you're just going to throw the name in there. They've never heard of Deb, and here we go. We're going to talk about her. There's
Yeah, if
all
you
the
throw
meeting.
the name in there like that, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just
No.
like any other idea, project, proposal. If you sort of
Mhm.
just throw it out for the first time in the main meeting, it's not going to go anywhere. So
Right.
how do you have those conversations, build that support, and dispel any concerns, address any concerns before
Mhm.
the meeting?
So wise. I want to talk about this Dining with Deb because you have done this for years now, even during the pandemic, and it's been really successful. You just had an event at Martha's Vineyard. Talk to me about the inspiration behind it and what you're finding women to, because there's different ways, right? You see women at church, or you see them at the park. What makes this so special?
So for me, Dining with Deb, and our tagline is Dining with Deb by women, for women, celebrating women.
Mm,
Um, was something that I looked at as an opportunity for women to support each other across all of the lines, professional women, across racial lines, across industry lines, across generational lines. But how can we show up for each other? It's hard for me to show up for you, engage with you, help you if I don't know you. So I find that a lot of us tend to stay in certain circles. We stay in our, kind of familiarity circles. We stay with our friend group, if you want to call it that, our girlfriends. But how can I lean in and engage with other women that I may not know very well? And I would say maybe sort of networking, but networking with deeper purpose.
mm,
Knowing that I need to know you. Yes, I am willing to help you. Here's who I am. Here's who you are. What are we both bringing together? But I got to have some comfort with you. I mean, most people are not apt to really help anybody if you don't know them. I mean, you're not, that's sort of being a good Samaritan. It's not a deeper, more sustained connection. So that's how Dining with Deb was born. I've done it in New Orleans for several years. When the pandemic hit, we did a virtual one and actually raised money through the United Way here for hospitality workers, for female hospitality workers in particular, whose jobs just suddenly went like that because when restaurants closed, they closed. That was it. And so, how can we give these women like grants, like quickly $500? And I mean, not much, but enough to make sure they could get groceries, they could keep the lights on or whatever when the jobs just went poof. So we even did it through the pandemic, but we try to bring information and insight that help women be successful. So, for example, you mentioned we just did one on Martha's Vineyard. So, in Martha's Vineyard, we had a panel of women, and on Martha's Vineyard, it tends to be more African American women than not, though not exclusively. But we talked about Black women in the AI revolution. So, AI is a big topic right now. And
mhm.
you want to be sure that as women in general, we know what's going on. We know who's in the space, what are they doing in the space, what's happening. And so I wanted to ensure that the women assembled, we had over 200 women assembled, could hear from people who are actually working in the space. So we always try to bring topics of relevance to the table for these women and then give them an opportunity to network and hang out and get to know each other and have a good time.
It sounds both feeding the mind and feeding the soul. So I love that
Yes.
because you can have both, right? It doesn't have to be all fun and not actually helping to pursue and further your career. I want to talk about your board service because I feel like you have had this amazing career. You continue with your corporate playbook work and your dining with Deb. How does the board service connect with, I mean, even because it's such a hard, it's who you know, right? And it's not like, okay, everyone puts in their application for a seat. How do these connect in your mind in terms of the getting to know people and your networking and your board service?
I think it's about, being intentional and being vocal about what it is you want to do
Mm,
and how you'd like to do it and where you think you can contribute and make a difference. And so for me, having been in the C-suite of what was at the time a Fortune 5 company, board service felt like something where I thought I could continue to add value beyond retirement, from the Fortune 500 C-suite, if you will. And so it is. I mean, it's great people that you work with. You feel like you are helping to shape organizations where they're going, what they're focused on. You're not management, so you're not trying to run the organization. You're not diving in deeply, but you are really using everything you've learned, everything you've learned from a career standpoint to this point, from a strategic standpoint, from a product knowledge, from a marketplace knowledge, from a relationship knowledge. So I find it very, very, very rewarding.
It feels like a very full life as leader, community member, dining with Deb, bringing community together, and then also board service. I want to bring on your corporate playbook because I know you have this amazing avatar and trying to make this bite sizable and relatable to people. Can you tell people about this?
Yes, I can. I can. Very soon, not too long from now, I have a little, I'll call it a booklet because it's a very small booklet coming out called The Corporate Playbook.
Mhm.
For many years, because my company is named The Corporate Playbook, I would go to speak or I would engage and people would say, oh, well, we'd love to buy a copy of The Corporate Playbook and share it with our leaders. And it's like, well, the corporate playbook's kind of in my head. There's no book, there's no physical anything. But the reason I use this title, this header, is because I really do believe that success in corporate America, in organizations, anywhere really, there's a playbook. There's a series of moves that you can make. It's just like a football or sports or volleyball or whatever you play. There's a series of moves that you can make to be successful. There's moves that can derail you. And so the more you can learn and master the moves that enhance your ability to move sort of forward, the better. And so I try to sort of lay that out. I am not a huge novel reader anymore. I used to be long ago. I'm almost sort of like an Audible kind of person now. So
Mhm.
podcasts really work for me. But I said, I've got to always be authentic to who I am and where I am at this point in my life. And so it's a booklet. It's a multimedia booklet. So it's got a physical sort of paper, digital piece to it that can be printed, but it also has links to video where I talk a little bit about what's in each chapter. So, for people like me who aren't going to sit down and read a huge business book, even though they may have it on the shelf because it looks good, but they're not really going to do it. This is perfect for you. It gives you some sound bites, some snippets, some examples, that you might use, or it may not have all the answers, but it might prompt your thinking around how to advance one's career.
Sounds fabulous. I can't wait. With that, Deb, are you ready for lightning round questions?
Sure, I always love lightning rounds. Whenever I moderate something, I always do them. So let's go. Lightning round is always fun.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Oh, vanilla.
Cooking or takeout?
Takeout, takeout. It's been takeout for a while. I like to cook Thanksgiving dinner. That's kind of it. The rest of it's takeout. Or better yet, it's delivery. How about delivery?
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
How about neither?
Have you ever worn socks with sandals?
Oh, no. Why would I do that? No, 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 no. No, no.
How would you rate your karaoke skills on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Mariah Carey?
Ooh, that's a tall 10. So let's bifurcate that. I would say in the shower, probably 7. Out of the shower, it's probably more like 4.
What's a recent book you read?
I would say this has been not very recent, but a more impactful book I read is called Belonging. It's by my friend Michelle Miller, CBS news correspondent, CBS correspondent Michelle Miller, who's on the Saturday morning show on CBS. It's her life story. It's called Belonging. It's powerful. It's rich. It's well written. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. So I really enjoyed that.
What's your favorite way to practice self-care?
Massages. I love massages. I when I even would travel conferences and stuff, if there was always an opportunity to do that. My thing was to kind of just have massages like almost all over the world. So I've had different kinds, different styles. So that's my thing. That makes me, that kind of takes me out of everything and kind of into my own kind of Zen zone, if you will.
What's a good professional development that you've done?
A good professional development. One of the most interesting ones that I would say most people have not done is it was called the Normandy experience. So I went with a group of, I don't know, maybe 25 to Normandy, France, with a group of professors from West Point, US Military Academy at West Point. And they took us through the leadership lessons of Normandy. So, how did they plan for the Normandy invasion? Again, from a US standpoint, what happens when you make contact with the enemy? How do you pivot? How do you have a plan B? And so I just thought those lessons learned as you are literally looking out on Omaha Beach or Juno Beach, and reading, so some of Stephen Ambrose's, D-Day, the 6th of June, all those things. It was just a great way to learn and solidify leadership lessons and practices that I keep with me today.
What's your definition of a boss mama?
A boss mama. Oh, I don't know. Me maybe. I don't know. Somebody who tries to tries to make it happen, and I am a mom, so let's go with that.
What advice would you give your younger self?
I would say to my younger self, it's going to all work out okay. Because I would say my younger self had a lot more angst than I have now. So if I could tell myself, stay the course, hang in there, it's going to all work out okay.
And then where can we find you, like LinkedIn?
So on LinkedIn, I am Deb Grant. Please feel free to connect with me. I love connecting with folks and knowing what you're doing and what you're up to and how I might help you and you might help me and we may collaborate. So Deb Grant on LinkedIn.
And then do you have a final ask, recommendation, or any parting thoughts to share?
My parting thoughts are have fun along the journey. I look at people and I know people and I've worked with people who were so caught up in the grinding and striving that they just didn't enjoy it along the way. And they get to, different parts of their life and they realize, wow, I wish I had, and I just don't have many I wish I had. Somewhere along the way, I tried to stop, not saying I did every single thing you ever wanted to do, but I've done most of them. So I would say enjoy the journey. Take the time to smell the flowers and enjoy the journey along the way.
So great. Deb, what a beautiful conversation. And yes, we should smell the flowers. I so appreciate you sharing and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.